You're such a genuine gem. Thank you for clicking on my video. I'm Brooke McKenna, but today's case is about a baby girl who was trapped in a well for 58 hours. A survival case so pure that it is sure to give you hope. This one is a breath of fresh air compared to many we talk about, but that didn't mean there wasn't hard work, desperation, and strength involved in these moments of life and death. I also want to thank today's sponsor, which is Skillshare. Now, summer is the perfect time for me to want to get out and try new things, kind of immerse myself in a whole new world that I knew nothing about prior. And that is why I love Skillshare, because it allows you to do so in such a way that it doesn't take a whole bunch of your time. You don't even have to leave your house. These are online classes that make it so easy to fit this into your life. You can choose the topics as well as the creators that you want and that you need. And I have actually been learning about plants recently because I have gotten some house plants, some to put on my balcony, and I have no idea how to take care of them. So it's the perfect place for me to just go in, search for what I need, and then a whole bunch of classes pop up that I can listen to. Now, I have been loving the class taught by Chris Satch and the Sill about happy houseplants caring for your plants. I found it super easy to learn about, and all the information I needed was right there for me. So if you want to try Skillshare, you can actually get a free trial of their premium membership with the link down below. The first 1,000 of you will be able to get that free trial. So make sure that you click the link down below, and thank you to Skillshare for sponsoring this portion of the video. Now let's get back to the story. So it was 1987 in Texas, and the McClure family actually lived in a kind of small town called Midland. This was husband and wife, Louis and Reba, and they were actually 18-year-old teenage parents, but they actually went by Sissy and Chip instead. They had an 18-month-old baby girl named Jessica. Now, Jessica had been born on March 26th of 1986 and was a playful, beautiful girl who loved watching Winnie the Pooh and was often called Juicy. She was very much the explorer, the curious type of little girl that always kept them on their toes. Now, Sissy and Jessica had been at Sissy's sister's home, which she was named Jamie Moore, because they were kind of having a hard time just with the struggles of being teenage parents and making enough money. And there was also the Texas oil bust happening at that time, so nobody was really doing well with money. But her sister did have a home at 3309 Tanner Drive, and she had an at-home daycare there. So Sissy would actually go there with Jessica while Chip was away at work, and she would help out her sister with the kids, whether Jamie needed to go out and run some errands or just needed to do something while she couldn't watch the children. Sissy was there to help her, and it was perfect because then Jessica had friends to play with. So the morning of October 14th, 4 kids arrived to this daycare from the neighborhood, and they were all kids that, Jamie and Sissy had watched before, but Sissy had told Jamie that day she would watch after them. It was a Wednesday morning. They weren't too riled up or anything. There was only 4 of them and then 5 including Jessica, but Jessica was having such a good time with the kids, so they all went in the backyard to play. This backyard was a fenced-in home. Nobody could get in, nobody could get out, so they really felt like the kids were safe back there. However, unfortunately, that was wrong. Everyone was having so much fun, and Jamie was out, like I said, so it was just Sissy watching them, but that is when a call came from inside the home. Now, back in 1987, there were no cell phones, and so in order to answer this phone, Sissy did have to run inside for a moment to get it, to make sure that there wasn't some sort of emergency or one of the kids' parents weren't calling to say that they were coming back or something had happened. Within minutes of talking to this caller, Sissy began to hear crying and screaming coming from the backyard. Immediately, she ran back out there, and upon looking outside, the children were all standing around and everyone looked okay, but then she realized her own daughter was missing. Jessica was gone. Terrified that her baby had disappeared, Sissy knew that there was no way that anyone had gotten into this backyard that was completely fenced in with no entry points, no exit points, so nobody had gotten in there and abducted her the same way that she couldn't have gotten out. She was very confused because there was no other entry point besides going through the home that she was inside of and knew that nobody had gone through. All the other children were there, but upon looking closer at these children, they were all kind of standing around this certain area looking at the grass. So she started walking towards them and they started kind of pointing down where the grass would be. She was confused by this until she realized it wasn't grass they were pointing at. They were pointing at a hole in the ground. It was a well that had a small opening at the top. This was a hole that had about an 8-inch or a 20-centimeter diameter. It was very small. It was believed that no human could fit down this, but they hadn't prepared for a very small child who was curious and could wiggle her way anywhere. As Sissy looked down into this hole, she realized that her daughter was trapped. She tried to reach down to grab her, but Jessica was too far away to pull up. The truth was, even if she would have been able to be pulled up, there was a small chance she would fit back through the same hole that she had fallen through. As any distraught mother would do, Sissy immediately ran, called 911, and asked them to come and save her daughter. She said she didn't know what to do. She called the police, but the 3 minutes it took for them to get there was like an eternity to her. She claimed that they had been covering up this well hole with a large rock so that nobody would get in there or nothing like this would happen. But they wouldn't have even imagined something like this would happen. But they had just done it out of caution, and they had no idea how the rock actually was moved because, of course, it was too heavy for Jessica to pull off. When investigators got there, they started trying to talk to baby Jessica, and there was a few moments of silence before they heard her begin to cry. Now, Sissy, who was standing nearby, said that she sounded further away than when Sissy had talked to her prior to calling 911, and investigators believe that she was slowly falling down this 22-foot shaft. First responders were called to the scene and they knew that they had to come up with a plan. They had to work quickly before Jessica fell down even further. While they were coming up with ways to get her out without harming her, the news was spreading quickly. Reports of what happened were being broadcast all across the town, and this led to the community not only wanting to know what happened, but to know if there was anything they could do to help. This was a small town. They had a sense of community, unlike the big cities, and they wanted to know if anything was possible that they could help with. At first, investigators were turning people away that were coming in with plans and advice because they didn't know what they were going to do in the first place. But many had doubts that this was going to end well because cases like this usually didn't. A case quite similar to this had occurred 5 years prior with a little boy named Alfredo Rampi. He lived in Rome, Italy, and he had been born on April 11th of 1975 to Fernando and Franca with the nickname Alfredino. He was 6 years old on June 10th of 1981, and that day he was playing in a village called Vermicino. His family had no idea where he had gone, and that day his father actually reported him missing and the search for him began. He requested a search of their large property, and after 2 hours nobody had located him. However, even using search dogs, they couldn't come across him until he spoke. An investigator had gone by this sort of narrow and deep artisan well, and that's when they heard him say, "Mommy." This well was an even bigger hole than Jessica had fallen into. It was 30 centimeters wide and 264 feet deep. By the time rescuers got to Alfredo, he was actually already 118 feet down, and by 4 a.m., rescuers began drilling a parallel hole a few feet away from this well, hoping to dig under and then over to find him. However, this was immediately stopped because Alfredo was sinking even deeper each time they drilled. They had no idea what to do next, and everyone was breathing down their necks because there was also this huge news media storm that was happening due to his case as well, especially when the Italian president Sandro Pertini heard what was happening and went to the scene. Now, because they actually never made the hole to the side, they had to go down through the well. They were also using a microphone at this time to send it down to Alfredo to see if he was talking and to make sure he was alive. This well was small enough for a small adult to be able to fit down, so Angelo Larici volunteered, and he was harnessed before being put face down to see if he could reach Alfredo on his own. Now, Alfredo and Angelo actually became so close that Angelo was able to put a harness on Alfredo. As Angelo tried to pull Alfredo up, it wasn't working. The mud around them became very hard to grasp at, and so they were muddy too, and they couldn't hold on to each other enough to be able to pull him up. Angelo tried for the next 45 minutes before having to be pulled up himself due to injuries of his own because he was being thrust down this well upside down. For the next 3 days, Alfredo was falling lower and lower, and his attempted rescue was being broadcasted live outside for the first time in Italy. But Alfredo had a pre-existing heart condition and he was breathing twice as fast as normal. By June 13th, everyone was slowly realizing that this may not have the happy ending they were hoping for, because the rescuers could hear through the microphone that Alfredo's voice was getting weaker. Another volunteer was slowly descended down the well to fully secure the harness and try to pull him up again when he noticed that Alfredo's head was tilted back and he wasn't breathing. At this point, authorities said that there was no way anyone else was going to go down there. It was just too dangerous. Everyone who went down was having significant injuries and having to go to the hospital once they came back up. And so they knew that he had not survived, and they officially sent down a sonar probe to see if they could hear a heartbeat, but they didn't. That night, he was officially declared dead, and they weren't able to get his body out for a funeral for another month. So for the rescuers of the 18-month-old Jessica McClure, they knew that every moment they waited was closer to her death. And they knew that Jessica was believed to be a healthy little girl, and this was something they hoped would give her more time. But in this suburb yard in Midland, Texas, dozens of people were gathered around this tiny well. Investigators, first responders, volunteers, and the media were all hoping for an easy answer, but that's not what they found. You see, this well was actually 80 feet deep. But at 22 feet, it shrunk, and so it made it into this very small pipe that they were hoping that Jessica wouldn't be able to fit through, so she would just sit at 22 feet. However, she had fit into this well at the top of the yard that nobody believed a child could fit through anyway, so there was still that possibility she could fit through the smaller part, and that is not what they wanted. They had come up with a plan to drill a parallel well, or a hole, that was about 5 to 7 feet apart from the well, and they brought in machinery to do this, but just like in Alfredo's case, the vibrations sent her farther down, and it also scared her. They were trying to use a large rat hole drilling rig, which is often brought in when workers are trying to put those phone poles into the ground. But even though the vibrations were anything but helpful, this was the only plan that they could think of to get Jessica out safely. So unlike in Alfredo's case, they continued to drill, but they would stop every once in a while just to make sure that Jessica was okay and that she was still talking, she was still awake, and she was still safe. Jessica was only a year and a half, so she couldn't really talk that well, but she would cry out when they would talk to her. A few times they stopped drilling altogether because no one could get Jessica to talk back to them. Even Sissy and Chip were out there trying to send her encouraging words, telling her to talk to mommy and daddy, and she wasn't responding. They were hoping that she was just napping because, of course, this almost 2-year-old wasn't going to just be awake for all of these hours, so they began going back to work, going as fast as they could while trying to be safe. The problem was there were hard layers of rock that were harder than granite that they had to get through. There wasn't just the soft dirt. A detective actually sat next to the well the entire time, listening for signs of Jessica waking up or being scared. He said that after he listened for so long, he actually got to know her mood. And at one point she would be singing, but when the jackhammering would start up, she would just kind of go back to this huffy little voice that was kind of like she was angry. He said that 80% of the time she was either crying or making some kind of noise, and he knew that she was okay, but they were either sending those, happy thoughts to her or asking asking her to sing for them, and she loved singing her favorite song, Winnie the Pooh. Finally, the 30-inch wide and 29 feet deep hole was drilled directly across from Jessica, and they were going to start going down this hole because they had actually gone 2 feet deeper than where they believed Jessica was, so they could drill across and not hurt her before reaching up to grab her. The media coverage went from being statewide to nationwide in just those few days. CNN was covering this story for 24 hours a day, and remember, this was 1987, so that was not a normal thing to do. The only other time this had happened is when the Challenger space shuttle had exploded a year earlier, and they filmed that. But now everyone in the country knew what was happening to baby Jessica, and they all began to feel like she was their own child. She was quickly being dubbed as everybody's baby. While rescuers began going down and drilling the hole that was 5 to 7 feet away from Jessica and the well, oxygen was also being pumped into the well for Jessica to make sure she could still breathe while they were drilling into the ground. They quickly found that the drilling going sideways was even harder because the jackhammers were meant to go down and not across. Driller Charles Bowler said that he didn't think he had ever drilled anything that hard, and the only thing that kept him going was hearing Jessica cry the closer they got to her. He also had his own 2-year-old child, and he just couldn't imagine his own child being in that situation. But for Sissy and Chip, it felt like this was taking forever, and they were working all day and through the nights. They weren't taking any breaks, but it just was not going as quickly as anybody hoped. The viewers of this broadcast had been sending flowers, toys, cards, money, and donations to the McClure family for what they had been through while she was even still in the well. As time ticked by and Jessica had spent 48 hours inside of this well, dirty and scared, the fears heightened of everybody. The rescuers, with the advice of medical professionals, had been told not to send food and water down because she might have internal injuries and this could make them worse. Plus, dehydration had not set in yet, so they knew that she was still safe without water. 58 hours had gone by, and this little girl had spent 2.5 days inside of this scary well. She was a brave little girl in the dark, alone. But then on October 16th at 8:30 p.m., rescuer Robert O'Donnell was brought back up the hole, and he was holding Jessica in his arms.
You know, Rodney, I don't think anyone at home can miss the fact that these guys are so tensed and so expectant here. You can just see it in the way that they're all acting. They're riveted to this hole and watching what's going on, and they've all put their hearts into this for so long. You can imagine the emotion.
As you can see, Mike,
are they bringing the cable and rope up at this time?
The cable and rope both appear to be coming up out of the well.
Yes, it does.
And very slowly, but they both appear to be coming up at the same time, which could indicate that, and we don't want to read anything too much into this, but which could mean that the paramedic and the board, which is to be strapped to the paramedic, are coming up at the same time.
Well, Rodney, the cable would probably be what's connected to the paramedic if that's what's happening, and then the rope to the board as well, right?
Right. And hopefully the board is, we've been told the board would be strapped to the paramedic as well, but I'm sure that is just a lifeline to that board.
Right.
But they are both coming up out of the well at the same time. You can see it moving. Both the rope and the cable are coming up at the same inch per foot at the same time.
Rodney, I think I'm hearing the crowd react back there too as well.
Yes.
It's getting louder.
We've got her.
They've got
We're getting the indication. We're getting the indication. People are seeing it.
Thank God.
Thank God for
Seeing it.
this.
There she is.
58 hours.
There she is. And her eyes are open. You can see her eyes open.
Bless her
She's
heart.
blinking.
Bless her heart.
She's blinking.
58 hours exactly. Thank God.
58 hours.
Bless your little heart.
That's excellent.
Oh my God.
That's wonderful.
She was wrapped in a spine board with bandages all around her head. Cuts and bruises covered her body as well as dried blood, and her eyes were barely open. But she was alive. She had survived, at least so far. Jessica was immediately rushed to the hospital. They had an ambulance waiting there for her. She got there as quickly as possible. And for the most part, Jessica's condition was a miracle. but she still had some things she had to get through. She hadn't had a broken neck or spine due to the fall or the rescue. However, when she had fallen, one of her legs was actually above her head, so that poor little girl was in this split for 58 hours, and this caused her foot to actually develop gangrene, and they figured they were going to have to amputate it. However, the doctors actually saved it with skin from another part of her body. They reconstructed her foot, and she only lost the small toe. Jessica also had a cut running from her hairline to the bridge of her nose in a diagonal line, and this had turned into a scar. She was also dealing with chronic rheumatoid arthritis at this point, but the 3 biggest TV networks at this time were interrupting regular programming that night to air her rescue to the world.
We interrupt our regular program schedule to bring you a special report.
This broadcast showed the most viewership that the networks had seen thus far, and the McClure family actually had no idea how big the story of their daughter was, because the rescuers had all cut the electricity to the home, making sure that that wasn't going to be a problem in the rescue, and so they hadn't had a TV this entire time. The first time they heard of all of this being on the news was when they got to the hospital. They were completely overwhelmed, and even a member of the community volunteered to be their spokesperson. But a spokesperson wasn't going to be enough, because Jessica would need 15 surgeries in total over the next few years. But thankfully, due to the generosity of the country, she had enough money to pay for these surgeries. The McClure family actually had enough to afford a trust fund for her. When she turned 25, there was about $1 million. They were also able to buy them a house as well as 2 new cars, and Chip was starting a tractor rental business, which was always his dream. Jessica had such an effect on the country that President Bush actually invited her to the White House just to hang out with him, and she is actually photographed taking his glasses and wearing them and giggling while he held her. Everyone wanted to watch baby Jessica grow up. She was everybody's baby after all, but that put a huge spotlight on the family that they didn't ask for. They were these teenagers struggling to raise their little girl who went from that to everybody knowing who they were and wanting to know about their personal lives. Some of the rumors about them were not as nice as others as well. One came out saying that Chip was actually on drugs and he had been in jail, and none of that was true. The McClure family received about 200 calls a day and letters by the truckload. Thankfully, most of these were positive. They just wanted to send kind words to Jessica and just, know how she was. But Chip had started this address book, keeping everybody's address who sent them something in order to tell them thank you. And this just got so overwhelming when the list went over 60,000 people. They had been asked to go on the Oprah Winfrey Show, as well as being on cover of People magazine. Now, the rescuers who helped baby Jessica also had trouble adjusting to normal life as well, because especially those in the paramedics and the fire department, they had such a high and they were deemed heroes. And then after that, they just kind of had to go back down to normal life in this small town, and that was really hard for them. They could never feel that level of joy. Jamie Moore, Sissy's sister, who owned this house, moved shortly after due to so many people wanting to come and see where this had happened. And the new tenant actually says that people still go there to see the well that she had fallen into, but now there's actually this memorial cover over it that says, "For Jessica, with love from all of us." And so he will take them back there to see that. Now, 2 years after this rescue, Chip and Sissy did end up getting a divorce. It was said to be very messy. It was all over the tabloids, and Chip claimed that their separation was inevitable. I mean, they were 18-year-old teenagers who were thrust into the spotlight, but it was actually postponed because of the public's view on them, and because, they didn't want to disappoint anybody, and they didn't want all of their dirty laundry to be spread out on the covers of magazines like it was. Chip went on to be the manager of a restaurant, and he remarried, but he said in an interview that Jessica was growing up to love time with her animals and she loved watching Disney movies. But Chip and Sissy did agree on one thing. They wanted Jessica to have as normal of a life as possible because they knew they had the opportunity to make her a star. But that's not what they wanted. In fact, she didn't even know she was the girl in the well until she was about 5 years old. She didn't remember a single thing, but she loved watching this show called Rescue 911, and it was probably something in her subconscious that told her why she had a connection to this, but she had no idea. She was once watching this episode about this little girl who had fallen down a well. She was really emotional about it, and she asked her mom, "Who's that little girl?" And that's when her stepmom actually told her, "Well, that was you." And she immediately started bawling and she broke down, and all those emotions came flooding back even though she didn't remember them. A TV movie was then created in 1989 about this story called Everybody's Baby. It is a very good movie. I watched it on YouTube. I'll link it below. It's very emotional and raw, and a lot of the timeline of what happened actually was true in the movie as well, which is nice to see.
Answer me, Jessica. Emergency rescue unit. 18-year-old child has fallen down a water well.
Rescue efforts are intensifying at this hour.
We need a miracle is what we need.
It took a little faith, a little courage, and a little girl to bring a nation together. Miracles do happen. Bo Bridges, Patty Duke, based on a true story, Everybody's Baby.
But Chip became extra cautious of Jessica after this, and of other children as well. If he saw kids out on the road without parents, he was constantly baffled as to why the parents weren't with them. He just was paranoid that children were going to get hurt if they weren't watched. I think both the parents had a bit of PTSD after this, but Sissy got remarried, and she actually refuses to talk to any interviewers, especially those who have spoken to Chip already. But she did do an interview with the Associated Press where she said, "I know everyone loved her, but I love her too. I just want her to be a kid like all the other kids she goes to school with. If we keep writing the baby Jessica story, my child will never be normal." Jessica's parents chose to give her the best life possible. One out of the limelight, one where she could make her own decisions and have a life of her own, not for the media. They even refused to show her face in the few interviews that they allowed her to do. Her half of her face was always cut off because they said they feared her being kidnapped after this. Then news broke about the rescuer, Robert O'Donnell, who was the man who brought Jessica out of that hole. He had actually died of suicide. This was in 1995. He had gone home to his parents' ranch that was in Midland, or a little outside of it, and his family members said that his life had fallen apart after rescuing Jessica. He said he enjoyed the fame, and when it was gone, he didn't know what to do with his normal life. He couldn't get back to it, and psychologists believed he was actually suffering from PTSD, and he just wasn't getting the help for that.
He was on Nightline. He met George Bush. He was on Oprah. He didn't go to Oprah. Oprah came to Midland. He was on the cover of Life magazine. He was inside People magazine. He won more awards than he could fit eventually on his resume.
Fame came quickly, but it left in a flash, and 8 years after America embraced him, Robert O'Donnell committed suicide. Fame had become the addiction he couldn't kick.
They identify with the media, with the glitz, with the glamour, with the limousines and the celebrities. And then when that's taken away, they're almost left with nothing.
Ready? Action!
For a time, it seemed that the story's fame, which even included this TV movie, could bring O'Donnell fortune. But this movie was a contributor to crippling depression.
He was supposed to play a newspaper reporter. And when the show was aired on the television, they'd cut out his part. He was totally embarrassed. It was sort of the beginning of the end for him.
The final reminder of how fame faded was TV coverage of the Oklahoma City tragedy. O'Donnell turned to his family and made a prophetic remark.
Those people had a lot of help for a very long time. And it was 2 days after that he shot himself.
Jessica did do a few interviews here or there without her face showing. She was around 11 at the time of the first interview coming out, and she said that she loved Beanie Babies and she had 9 dogs and cats. She loved skating. She said she was actually proud of her scars because it meant to her that she had survived. Jessica had nightmares for quite a long time, but it had since faded, and she was doing really well. She was doing great in school, getting A's and B's. She loved playing the piano and French horn. She was a normal little girl. By 15, she did an interview where she literally said that talking about the incident bored her. She was sick of it. She didn't even remember it, and she knew that everybody had this idea of her as being this baby when she was growing up. Jessica went on to graduate from Greenwood High School in 2004, and she began to date this man who had no idea who she was. His name was Daniel, and he had no idea even about the story of baby Jessica. And a month after dating, they were actually engaged when he said he was going to break up with her because he found it so strange that people just kept coming up to her, wanting to talk to her, and he didn't know who she was, and she didn't appear to be famous or anything. And that is when someone in Daniel's family told him, "You don't know who she is, do you?" And he said no. And that's when he was informed that she was baby Jessica. And they, went on to laugh about that and get married, and they were so happy together. They said that it was literally love at first sight. Jessica was working as a special education teacher at an elementary school, and she did get her trust fund at 25 years old, but it wasn't as much as it originally was because her family did use some of it when she was younger just to, live. But there was also a stock market crash where some of the money was wiped out, but she did have enough to get a good education and to get on her feet. She was just grateful that so many people had given her all that they had, even though they didn't know her.
Former Jessica McClure, now Jessica Morales, is going to speak out in her first live TV interview ever in just a couple of moments. But first, to look back at one of the most memorable news events in recent history. Her name is Jessica Morales, but millions of Americans would remember her simply as Baby Jessica.
Makes me feel lucky that I survived it and happy that I did. That I can come back here 20 years later and say, hey, they couldn't cage me then, why should it cage me now?
You hate when people refer to you as Baby Jessica?
No, because like they told little Bow Wow, you'll never get rid of the little part, because you'll always be what you are remembered as.
I understand that there was some teasing that went along, and actually, I don't know, some of it may be good-natured ribbing, but actually it exists to this day. Recently, you were walking, you tripped over a curb, and some guy looked at you and said, "You still haven't learned how to watch your step," or something like that?
Yes, I was at Cheddar's, and I stepped off the curb, and a little man said that to me. He said, "You are the baby that fell in the well, right?" And I said, "Yes, sir." And he said, "Well, I thought you'd learned how to watch your step when you were 2 years old."
And there was a young boy, I understand, through an early part of your school, even into maybe high school, who used to refer to you in an unflattering way. He called you the well dweller. You want to quickly tell me what happened to him?
A friend of mine punched him.
Today, the scar is barely visible on Jessica's forehead, and she said that she found that she actually has a bald spot and a scar on the back of her head too, because it was believed that when they were doing the drilling and the vibrating was happening, she was resting her head on the pipes in front and behind her, and that would end up scarring her and breaking the skin open. It was said that all Jessica wanted to be when she was younger was a mom, and she now has 2 children, Simon and Cheyenne. Both of them have Googled who she is and found out what happened to her, but she's just their mom. They don't really see her as anything but that. And she is now a stay-at-home mother, and she absolutely loves that. She isn't sad about what happened to her either. She's grateful. She has done interviews with a few sources as an adult. She really seems to be not the center of attention kind of person. She enjoys her life of peace in Midland and out of the spotlight. I think so many people are interested in her because it is a survival story. And, a lot of the times when it comes to survival stories, there's so much darkness involved, whether it's abduction, whether it's sexual assault. But in this case, it really was just this freak accident that happened. And so her surviving that is so incredibly amazing as well in many different ways. And I think that's why so many people are intrigued. And the reason I chose to do this story now is because she is an adult. She has come out on her own. And I didn't want to add to more of the, the drama that her family has been through when she was younger, with trying to keep her out of the spotlight, because she has come forward now. But I do just want to say I love that she is pretty low key, and she even now doesn't want this to be some huge thing where she's getting so much attention and fame and profiting off of what happened to her. I think that's beautiful. But it is said that this story completely changed 24-hour news and was the turning point of seeing so many things live broadcasted. It became so popular that so many networks wanted their hand in this even longer time frame to make money. This story was also so big that there was a poll at the Pew Research Center for People and the Press which asked about the biggest story of the decade. And the only other thing that beat Jessica's story was Princess Diana's death. That was how big it was to the world. Yet even though Jessica's story being widely known was a good thing, because it was a survival story that gave people hope, there was also the story of Alfredo Rampi that we had talked about that wasn't as good of a story to be broadcasted because it ended in tragedy. Over in Italy, after this story had been broadcasted and millions of people had watched his death, there were a lot of people who were trying to protest 24 Hours News and people broadcasting things like this because Alfredo had died, and the public began to speculate who was responsible for this after this. They were pointing fingers. They were saying that maybe it was his father, maybe it was the person who made the well, and that person actually was charged but then was never convicted. In the same ways that Jessica's family got support, Alfredo's family was burdened with those theories and blame, and his case brought into question the privacy and ethics of broadcasting events like this. Many years later, with cameras attached at our hips at all times, this has only gotten more prevalent. Yet in the same ways it can be disrespectful amongst a tragedy, it can also be life-changing for so many. Take the 16-year-old girl who bravely recorded George Floyd's murder in the street that day. We will always be creatures that want to know about the darker parts of life. It's a survival instinct after all. I just hope that through all of these lenses, empathy for the victims isn't lost. That is the most important thing. And when it's through a lens, when you're watching it, when it's not in front of your face, it can sometimes appear more fictional than real, than a real life that was just taken. So I know that this survival story is much, much different, but I think we all need a bit of hope, of fresh air, of a case not all about murder and abduction and horrible, horrible things happening. So I hope you enjoy this. If you didn't know, I do have a playlist where I do all of survival stories, and they are full of amazing, brave people just like Jessica. So it will be here if you want to. It'll be somewhere. I don't know what I'm doing with my hands. It'll be somewhere on the screen if you want to watch it, but don't ever forget to speak up. Your voice is powerful enough, and I love you to absolute pieces. Okay, bye.